Welcome to our live today on energy and muscle testing. We're super excited about this one. It's going to be interesting trying to teach energy and muscle testing via the internet.
Without you standing here. We'll see how that goes.
But it needs to be done. So here we are. We're going to attempt it and we'll do our very best at it. Please share this live with people that you know might be interested in this. And we're just going to try to give people a couple minutes to get joined. We're going to start with what muscle testing is. Who can muscle test?
Does anybody know what muscle testing is?
How to have confidence when you're muscle testing, different ways to muscle test, some checks and balances, some safety things, and then a little bit of kind of our beliefs of where you should and shouldn't go. You know, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So
well, that's given me a lot of topic to cover.
That's kind of what we're gonna go and what we're gonna start with. Muscle testing is, like I said, it's going to be a really hard topic to cover via the internet, but we're going to do our very best. We are going to do another live in 2 weeks on Wednesday. That's our day for lives. And the next one is going to be on kind of everything we've accomplished in our lives, everything that we've written, every video we've put out, how you would find it.
I love attending these. I find out what's going on.
That's right. Well, we tell her, but then it takes us 3 or 4 months to get the material
I've
written.
forgotten by the end of the day.
By then she doesn't know. I keep track of the schedule. So that one's going to be interesting. If you're looking for information on acne, how would you even know if we had it and how you'd find it? So that one's going to be really cool. I'm hoping to be able to share my screen and kind of walk around the internet and show you where we've put stuff, and it'll be fun. So go ahead and share this because we're going to get started here pretty soon on how to muscle test, what muscle testing is.
Is there a message? What muscle testing is?
Muscle testing
I don't know. My favorite way to describe muscle testing is Ben Franklin hanging on to the end of his kite. He knew he had something when he discovered electricity, but he had no idea what. So there's so much information, misinformation, but to my way of thinking, the muscle test generally, not always, is simply the communication of your thoughts to the muscles of your body. It was originally discovered by a man who was working with rehabilitation of muscles of patients who had been in car accidents or trauma. And he had to factor in the mood they were in order to assess how much muscle strength they were getting from their program. If they got depressed, if they got sad, if they got discouraged, they would show less muscle strength than they were really capable of. And so adapting that to, well, if I think a negative thought, my muscle is going to be weaker than it would be if I were being positive. And then you take it one step further than that. And if I'm telling myself truth, my muscle will be strong. If I'm not, it will manifest a weaker signal. So that's the basis of it. There's other aspects to it too. My middle of the road, very Mormon father, he stood up in a class one day and very calmly informed us if our muscle test wasn't a confirmation of what we already knew by the Spirit, we should quit doing it.
And that's what we'll cover that, and just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Sometimes he was right. That there's both. There's understanding. The belief of most muscle test people is that we all have the blueprint of our own creation, or we understand our own RNA, DNA. And that is what we're testing into, is our own energetic knowledge of ourselves. And that to me is the best explanation until I start surrogate testing for someone a ways away. Then we have to find a different explanation. And we'll talk about that too as we go along. So
my first experience with muscle testing was actually at a young women's girls camp. And it was one of the stake leaders brought a girl down and had her say things about herself, like, I don't like the way I look, I think I'm fat, I think I'm ugly, different things. And she had her hold out her arm, and then she would push on it to show her that it was weakening that arm muscle. And the girl was like, well, yeah, but I'm holding my arm out and it's getting tired. And she says, well, keep holding your arm out and now say things about yourself that are nice. Like, I think I'm beautiful. I think people like me. I think that I could be very popular. I think I have a lot to contribute to this world. And those types of things. And even though she'd now been holding her arm out even longer, the muscle was stronger. And she, positive affirmations and what you tell yourself are very important. And so when I came across muscle testing, to me, I remember that experience and I thought, well, yeah, there's obviously something to this. And it can be a great blessing in your life if you learn to do it and
Isn't that
develop
interesting?
confidence.
If it's making a muscle stronger,
What's it doing to your energy system?
well, the heart is a muscle, the
That's true.
uterus is a muscle, the kidney and the bladder contract. If it's doing one muscle in your body, it's doing them all.
Yep.
So positive thoughts about yourself, telling yourself truth. If you really do need to exercise more, that is not a negative.
Vicki, I'm not going to try your last name, but I'm excited that you're here. That's awesome. Thank you. And good morning, Trish. Sometimes it tells me the names of people that join, and sometimes it doesn't. So welcome
If you
everybody.
don't get welcomed by name, it's because there were many of you.
I
or
think
it
it's
didn't
people
tell
that
us.
are on my friends list. So I just need more Facebook friends, I guess.
So let's go. Valerie just told you the story of her first experience with muscle testing at a state girls camp of all places.
State Girls Camp.
First place I ran into it was at a Relief Society meeting.
Hmm.
And they stood a group of women up, about 8 or 9 strong, and they had them all say their name and sway forward, say something else. They did the whole little thing, and they had somebody test their arm when they held it out. They played with muscle testing quite a while. And then they stood them in a row and had them put their hands on each other's shoulders. And they had the one at the end of the line way down there say, "My name is," the person next to her. And they tested her arm for her own name, and it wasn't strong. They tested it for the person whose name she had used, 1 or 2 people down the line, and it held strong for the other person's name. Their point was to demonstrate that we really can connect with each other so well as to serve because we know what they need. It was a great demonstration, but it was also
A very good, interesting
a little
lesson on
interesting.
energy. So,
Anyway, it was a little freaky.
so muscle testing is the relationship between muscles and you use the body to access that knowledge. It has lots of different names. You can hear it called kinesthetic testing or biokinetic testing. It can be called energy testing, muscle testing. It's kind of confusing, but we're talking about the same thing. No matter what label or name you use, it is the same thing.
And the one thing, no matter where, and I'm going to give you some other theory later on that branches out a little bit, but there's a lot of theory as to who's answering the muscle test. Years and years and years ago, when I first started teaching it, I had a mother-daughter team in my class, and they referred to it as George. And whenever George wasn't giving accurate answers, they would just send him back to bed. We're
George.
putting George back to bed. It was, but I can tell you one thing: it is an energetic thing. Whether it's your energy, the energy around you, the energy of the person you're testing, the energy from the light of Christ, whatever it is, you need to always be aware that there is 2 kinds of energy in the world, and you need to be absolutely certain all the time that you are tapping into the right source of energy. Whatever your belief system is, I'm sorry, if you don't believe in Satan, well, you've got to believe in negative because you got to seen it.
There's a positive and a
And,
negative energy force.
And be careful. We talk about a lot in class when we teach people here, staying out of the jungle with testing. And
The
so
jungle. George in the jungle?
George.
Is that intentional?
Look out for that tree, kind
Yes.
of thing.
All
So
right.
do be careful. There is both negative and positive energy there.
So in order for us to demonstrate muscle testing in different ways that you can muscle test, we're going to have to stand up, which is going to cut our heads off. So we're going to adjust the
In a
camera a
minute.
little bit. Oh, you're not ready to do that
No,
yet?
not quite.
You have to be patient with us when we get there.
Yeah, we don't rehearse this before we go. And
No,
so
we
I don't know
don't.
what she's going to say, and she doesn't know what I'm going to say. But the one thing I wanted to say before we do it is that one thing I've noticed as I've taught hundreds of women to muscle test over the years is that they become more intuitive. For a while, they rely more on the muscle test, and then they hit a point where they realize that as they think about a problem or think about a question or try to word the question right for the muscle test, their intuition is gathering together the facts, the things they know.
Their connection with
And
heaven.
their
has to be
connection
good.
with their body, with when their body doesn't feel well, with when they're coming down with a headache or a cold, they become far more in tune with their environment and with themselves. So if you learn to muscle test for no other reason, you'd be surprised how rarely I do it. And when I do it, it's a confirmation for what I already know. And once in a while, like this morning, they handed me a bottle of water, and I thought it looked like one of those with NutraSweet in it. And this bottle of water will be fine for me. Surprised the heck out of me when it said yes.
All we need is you with a headache right now, and I'd have to do this by
Yeah.
myself.
Can't see anywhere. So It's nice to be surprised by your muscle test once in a while because it lets you know you are staying out of outcome. You're not coloring it by what you believe. So I always like that.
Definitely, as we're going along, this is going to be one that's definitely going to raise questions. Go ahead and send us those questions. I'll try to
read them at the same time.
If we're confusing, I mean, it's a confusing topic. So go ahead and shoot us your questions.
Shoot us your questions. Yes.
We don't mind.
All right.
Okay.
You're going to cut our heads off now and stand us up?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Puts more of me in the view. Yuck.
All right.
Oh, here's our heads again. All right. What are we doing?
Well,
my arm or yours?
I don't know. Is that enough? So you can be the person that's testing, and I'll be the testee.
Bother. Okay.
What are you going to test me for? So this is an easy way to begin
I want this
testing.
arm.
You want this one?
Yep. Okay. And let's turn you. Oh, there you are. Very good. All right. So
Maybe I'll make this full screen so she can see better what we're doing. We don't. There we go. Sorry.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so this is, let's put your arm down. The most simple way to learn to test is actually a simple sway test. So what you're going to do is set your parameter for forward is yes and away is no.
And this would be if you're testing on yourself.
Yourself, yes, or teaching someone else to. So why do I want forward for yes? I'm kind of specific about that because as I teach young people, I've taught kids as young as 7 or 8 to test. And when they pick up something in the store or someone suggests to them a behavior they don't want to participate in, I want that no to be so firm that
Wham.
and I want the lean forward for truth to be something they feel in their center.
Why would you teach a child that young to muscle test?
Well, I had a little nephew once that was as allergic to NutraSweet as me. And that way, if he was offered a piece of candy somewhere, that's why we did it. So that he would know not to eat that. I have to tell you a funny story. His mother handed him a plate of cookies one day and he immediately swayed way backwards. He was very angry because mom had made these lethal
So they couldn't have NutraSweet.
because mom made them and she knew better. It wasn't that he couldn't have a cookie or
Couldn't
even
eat the
2
whole
cookies.
plate.
It was the whole plate.
Take one off and put it in your hand and
So-
you will, you're okay.
So, muscle testing can be tricky that way.
Okay.
It's very literal. So if you're going to play with us, stand up and say to yourself, my name is,
Stand up and do this with us.
and just tell yourself and practice it. Okay, every time I say something accurate, I'm going to sway forward. Make yourself do it. Every time I say something that isn't accurate, I'm going to sway backward and make yourself do it. It's like learning to ride a bike. Teach your muscle what you want it to do 2 or 3 times. Do it yourself.
And this is not something we haven't sway tested.
My name is
Well done,
Marie.
easier.
I'm making myself sway forward. My name is
Valerie.
George. Okay. And after you've done that a few times, then just hang loose and say, my name is,
Whoa.
use your name. Okay.
You can do it in your mind too, but when you're learning to muscle test,
It helps to
putting it out there verbally really helps. But I mean, you get to where you're fairly confident that you've been doing it for a while, and you go to the grocery store and you want to test something. You do not need to stand there and look like an idiot. You can just maybe stand there and look like you're just studying the green beans.
We can teach you how to test that you're not
In your
swaying like the
mind,
leaning trapeze.
And that's it, baby steps. A great place to start is to learn to sway test, and then to learn to sway test quietly, and then
to test one toe against the other while you're
while you're completely inconspicuous.
I worked for probably several years trying to teach one woman to test. We never got past the my name is. Her name, we knew what her name was. We tried a couple of, and finally in one class I said, okay, we're going to conquer this or die today. And it just popped into my head. Was there a nickname when you were very young that someone special to you called you? And she says, oh, my big brother called me Rosebud. And as soon as that came out of her mouth, she swayed forward. Muscle testing was a piece of cake from there. She had finally felt a yes instead of solid no's. It was pretty
That's
fun.
interesting.
So
Okay, so if you are sway testing or testing a muscle and you need to test for someone else.
okay, if you need to test for someone else, okay, this is a good muscle to test. But how much do you use? About the weight of a 2-pound bag of powdered sugar. And one of the tricks to do that, like I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to have you say, my name is Valerie. But before you say it, I'm going to say my name as Valerie, and I will say, hold 1, 2, and then you say it. Okay, my name is Valerie.
My name is Valerie.
Hold 2. That gives her a minute to weigh. You're not
Accept it.
catching her before, you're not catching her after. The muscle has a minute to respond to what it, give it a second. When you test with someone else, you'll develop a rhythm and you'll know exactly what you're doing. Okay, that one works really well unless they happen to have a damaged shoulder.
You can use the other arm.
Yes, and some people are just plain stubborn.
That's true.
I mean, tested a woman who I won't name her. She's not alive still, but no matter what you did, everything held strong. She was not going to admit to a weakness no matter what.
Ooh.
So there were no answers. She's related to you, but you can, anyway. So I taught her to put her arm this way because,
You need to see that better, and I'm not.
all right, just turn your palm out, okay? Oh, tippy toes.
Palm out, okay?
Palm out, just about 4 inches away from the body, because most women do not have sufficient muscle structure to hold when their muscle is slightly weakened by a no answer.
So you'd be pushing it
So
towards
you
the
would-
body.
You would know you're pushing it away from the body. So
Oh.
when you ask the question, you pull it away. So say, my name is Valerie, and try to hold it in
Give
spite of
me
that.
my 1, 2, though.
Okay,
My name is Valerie.
1, 2. She's trying to hold it.
I'm a
There's,
stubborn one.
there's no way. It was
I
pretty
couldn't.
resistant, but I didn't have to use more than 2 pounds to do it.
I felt that in
And
my shoulder
notice what
blades.
she did. Okay, she teapotted. In order to make it, she leaned away from me so that I would think that it had floated. It's called the teapot. Okay.
Okay.
So
Let's try a negative answer.
a negative answer. Okay. You want,
And I'm not George. Can't be George.
all right. So why can't it be
Long
George?
story. Okay.
I don't know. What are you going to say? My name is,
Not George and not Aubrey. Something else.
well, pick it. My name is,
My name is. Oh wow, this is hard. My name is Mary.
my name is Mary. Okay. Say it again.
My name is Mary.
1, 2.
That
See,
was so
she
weird.
can't do it. She can't. She's pretty stubborn too.
I am stubborn.
Okay, another
Right.
muscle, and I don't know how to demonstrate that either without standing on my dirty chair.
What do you want to see? Oh,
Strong men,
Okay.
strong men, you make them hold their knee up and test that knee. Not even a strong man can hold you against that. You can feel the give in
Not
their
with a
knee.
negative answer.
Not with a negative answer, you will feel the give. So
Okay.
you can do it when a person's laying down on a massage table. Just put their elbow on the table and use the arm any way that you want to. It doesn't matter what muscle you test as long as you have a
A
muscle.
muscle.
You can test, a common way to test is this. We can't do that for some reason.
That one is easier than the alternative. I'm gonna see if I can get this on the camera, which is the finger, and it'll pull through on a no. Once you've trained your energy to do that.
This is a yes.
This is just it just
This
gives
is a
you
no.
2 fingers rather than 1.
This confuses my energy. It doesn't know which one's the tester and which one's the testee because they're both
So
around.
this one's the tester.
This one works
is
for
easier.
me. Yeah. This is a yes. This is a no. This is a yes. This is a no. My name is Larry. My name is George. You train it. Give it a minute to know what it's supposed to feel like, and it will automatically do it. So
Okay.
anybody out there going, I can't do this. Yeah.
So practice some sway testing, practice some testing on some other people, and then you're going to want to graduate to testing this way. And ultimately, this is so much faster, especially if you have a list of questions or you're trying to go down through a list and find the best oil for you to use or best homeopathic or some such.
And you
thing,
take all day swaying and swaying if you're doing it that way. Another test that works well for me is to slide one fingernail across the other one.
I can't do that one very well.
A yes holds, a no slides over. And you can do that pretty unobtrusively by hiding one hand in the other. You know?
I need new clothes. I've lost so much weight.
She's lost. You need to raid my closet.
Well, yeah, but we're getting to be about the same
I know, and
size.
it's just, but I have plenty. So
All right. Sorry.
I've been this weight before a couple of times, and I shop.
So the next thing we need to do is, if you are testing and you're not getting, your name is Valerie, you're getting no's when you should be getting yeses, and you know that you should be getting yeses because you know the answers to the questions you're asking, that would mean that you're not balanced. So we need to talk about ways that you could get balanced, how to tell when you're balanced, because before you ever start testing, you should make sure that you're balanced. The easiest way to do that is to test your name. My name is Valerie. If you get a no, you're not balanced, and you need to balance before you go on testing and acting on the information that you get from that test. So, balanced. Ha, ha,
Okay.
ha.
How to get balanced? Well, first thing to do is to go have a big drink of water.
And a good way to find out if you're balanced is not to test I am balanced. Let's just, no, test something that you know, because that's going to be a lot more accurate. And if you're not balanced, then you're going to get the wrong answer and you're going to go off from there. That's not a good question.
And, make sure if you're testing for someone else that you really know. I will never forget the first time I was actually in a muscle testing class that I paid attention to because I wasn't anti-muscle testing. A friend of mine poked my arm out and said, I like romaine lettuce. And she got a definite no. And she said, I told you I can't do this, you know. I don't like romaine lettuce. I like green leafy lettuce, but that romaine has that white
a little bitter.
stalk up the center, and I don't care for it. She was quite proud of herself when I told her she was right. You know? So be sure you know the answer, know the question. What are you asking? You know,
Yep.
green leafy lettuce is different. So some ways to get balanced besides drinking water.
Water is huge.
When
if you are
I
dehydrated, you will not be able to
test
test
accurately ever. When
Water
I first
conducts
started,
energy.
when I first started to muscle test, I would get up early in the morning and muscle test a session, and I would do pretty well for about 15 minutes, or until the first child got up demanding breakfast. You know, it's like permission to muscle test would just go sideways. So, what do I just used that word, permission to muscle test, and we didn't cover that yet.
No, we need
We'll
to
do that in a minute.
So let's talk about other ways that you can get balanced. Sometimes it's energy between one side of the brain, the left brain, and the right brain not being balanced, or the left side of the body, the right side of the body. And so there's some simple things that you can do. We probably should have done this while we were standing up. But there's one called, it's cross crawl, but we're gonna do it standing up.
Yeah.
So you take right hand, and put it on your left knee.
You can pull the
While
knee
you're
up
standing
towards
up.
you.
So
like
you're
kind of a
going to pull the
marching
knee
thing.
up and touch it with this hand. Then you're going to pull the opposite knee up and touch it with this hand. You're going to do that back and forth just to get the energy to cross over opposite sides of the body. That's a really fast way to balance. Drinking water is huge. Another one.
This cross crawl thing, I knew a young college student who was struggling a little bit, and there were other people in his dorm that were, and he would, after everybody went to bed, imagine what time of the day morning that was in a college dorm, then he would go crawl up and down the hallway on his hands and knees, making sure that it was the right left thing properly. Pretty soon there were other kids joining him and improved the math scores all over the place. You know? What an interesting way to do that. So, but you can do it just standing and marching in place. Touch your right hand to your left knee, your left hand to your right knee, and just march in place. That is an easier way to do it than down on your hands and knees. Interesting thing about this young man is that he was born at a time when his family was building on. They built the basement, and that's where they lived, and then they built the upper part. And so he lived his crawling stage of his development in a playpen, so he wouldn't crawl off the edge of the unfinished house as they put the studs and built the walls. And he never did actually crawl. And later on, it affected his development. Who is this young man? He's one of the most brilliant computer programmers in the world. It's flown around. You know?
I had a son who didn't crawl. I only have one son, so I just gave that one away. But he army crawled, and we discovered a small issue in the lower vertebrae in his lower back, and he would army crawl and drag his feet behind him. And by the time we got that minor spina bifida corrected, he was walking. But him and I would get down and we would crawl every day, just as a, make it a game and play, because I knew that crawling stage, we didn't want to just skip it. It was important. And he is my child who tends to focus on one thing and have a hard time switching.
And he likes to live his life in fantasy land. If you let him do,
he has a hard time.
Whatever he does with his future,
really.
it's going to involve writing or producing fantasy. I don't know.
Yep, but that is a hugely important thing, and it does help us to balance. It helps us to cross energy from one side of the body to the other. Another way to balance is called a lazy 8. So if you picture an 8 out there in front of you, a great big giant 8, and then now turn it on its side, and you would just put your finger out. I'm going to get away from the camera, and you would trace that 8. Follow it with your eyes.
It's important to follow it with your eyes.
So, and that's the same thing. You're crossing from one side to the other.
With one of my sons, I bought a big whiteboard and colored markers so that he could follow it with his eyes. It would be interesting to stand in front of him and watch, because his eyes would skip as they came over the midline. They would skip as they came back over the midline for a long time, and it made a tremendous. I had taken him to a foot zonist, and he was described as having an issue with the limbic bond. He did not move from the left side of his brain to the right side of his brain easily and willingly. And the color helped too. The color and the whiteboard was an effective way to help him cross that midline, when he had.
So let's say it, for argumentative sake, that you have drank water, you're not dehydrated, you have cross crawled, you have done lazy 8s, you have taken a couple of really good deep breaths.
You've done a thymus thump. We're going to show you in a minute.
Yeah, that's another one.
Put your hand over your heart as though you're going to pledge allegiance, and go up. And you will be going in the right direction, round and round and round and round.
So if there was a clock on your chest,
yep, You would be going,
And
the
12
clock were
was here.
facing out,
Yep, the clock's facing
you would be going counterclockwise.
counterclockwise. Okay, so say you've done all of those things and you're still not balanced to where you can test. I have had in very rare occasions in my life where I have had to meditate with oils, maybe ones that build confidence or connect me closer to heaven. I have had instances where in order to be able to test, I have been required to spend some time in my scriptures or even attend the temple, something that actually brings me closer to heaven, because
Sometimes
that's where you balance.
let me tell you a story. Early in my muscle testing with my friends, two of them got together to test and they could not get permission. We'll talk about permission in a minute to test. Just wasn't there. They couldn't get the answers. They couldn't get yeses. And so they finally, okay, what shall we do today? And one of them said, oh, let's just go shopping. And immediately both of them swayed forward. Now, neither one of them had a great deal of money at the time, so I think they took about $10 and went to Logan and hit the DI and spent the day goofing off. You know, what did their bodies need to heal more than anything else? Not
Time
more
together
energy work,
and
not more tinctures, not more. They just needed a
downtime.
down day. And so watch out for that one too.
I haven't come across that one. I don't believe
When
in
I
downtime.
get
Never given me.
confused answers, it's generally because I have a list of people I test for in the morning that I'm working with and checking up on, and as my parents aged, and if I couldn't get answers that made sense for myself, it was generally because I needed to stop a minute
Work with
and
someone
call
else.
my father, work with him a minute on some issue, or there was something else going on. I wasn't to focus on myself, so it could be focus on you or not focus on you.
That's a
Sometimes it
good
can
first
be
question
very-
right after establishing that you're balanced. Who needs my help the most today?
So let's talk about this permission thing.
All right.
Did we cover all the balancing techniques?
I think so.
All right. So
Thymus thump, water, deep breath.
the basic ones. There may be more on the blog.
Yes.
We didn't cover.
That's something I didn't say. There is a blog that actually, we wrote this blog 2 years ago.
It's a composite of several different pieces, so there's some
And it's
repeat
pretty much
information.
what we're covering today. And so if you are struggling down the road and you're like, well, that was a really good class, I wish I could just take that over again. This class will be available on YouTube, but you may scan the article on the blog and find your answer faster that way. You may print it out and take it with you. You're welcome to whatever. If it helps you at all, how about it? So there you go.
So permission. That's
Permission.
what I have a short memory this morning. It's been a
Uh-huh.
long week. I've been teaching all week.
This one's going to get long.
So permission. There are places that you don't go with the energy test. We'll cover those in more detail, but one thing I learned as a parent, as I learned to muscle test, that shopping in my kids' minds was not allowed. If you won't ask your child the question in person, you probably shouldn't ask it with the muscle test. Now, there may be rare occasions when you violate that with heaven's permission and 2 weeks of begging. Be very careful with that. I know some parenting schools will tell you, open your children's mail, keep track of what they're doing. That wouldn't have worked for me. And I don't think it would have worked for any of my children. So you're going to, first thing, permission. I don't know how you feel, but if I'm sitting somewhere out to dinner or somewhere at a ward party or something, somebody comes up behind me and grabs my shoulder, starts, "Ooh, I hate that.
You just violated her.
Gosh, I hate you walking around in my head even worse." It's just, don't be doing that. So verbal permission.
Ask them
if they would like you to use the muscle test to help them find some answers. But the second part, and to me the more important part, is the energy permission. And that's what we were talking about with my friends. They wanted to work together. They had permission from each other to work together, but for whatever reason, they didn't have energy permission to do so.
The energy said, no, let's just go shopping.
So why would you not have energy permission if you had verbal permission? Well, some of those reasons are because you're doing too many other energetic things, several modalities. You may be working in body code or emotion code. You may have done, whatever you may be doing. Maybe a homeopathic you're taking is making adjustments and you just don't need to be messing with anything else at the moment. Could be a lot of reasons. Could be that, yeah, they gave you permission, but the issue is not really one they want you playing in.
Someone would
They
be better.
prefer to do it themselves later. One class I was in, we were testing from lists, and down in the bottom corner it said, therapist can't know. And everybody freaked out. Why couldn't the therapist know? And my friend who knows my family well said, well, obviously you haven't met Larie's kids. I had a son who told me, Mother, you can test for me anything you want. You just can't get in my face with it, So you have to act with those permissions if you want correct answers. So how bad is it to violate that? Well, I'm a stubborn person and I'm a curious person. When I first learned, well, not the first time I learned to muscle test, but the first time I actually started doing it for anything useful, I came home and I had some serious heart issues going on. And I checked, there were emotional, physical issues, and I started working on it. And I got up one morning with no permission to work. And I said, what's the worst that can happen? And I worked anyway. I was several weeks before I could walk up my stairs from the basement to the, overtaxed the energetic system of my heart, and the electrical system went absolutely bonkers for days. It's like, don't be doing that. And I could tell you a whole raft of stories from class, but that would be other people's personal. Everybody tries it once.
That's right. So you want to establish that you're balanced. You want to establish that you have verbal permission to go where you're going. And if you're working on yourself, then that's a given. And then the third thing is that you have energy permission to work on yourself.
It's a simple yes and no question.
It's really comes down to trying first to do no harm. Your goal is to improve and to make better. So you want to first do no harm. And there are some questions that you can ask.
I want to tell them a story first, okay?
Oh, is this the toothpaste story?
First time I was taught to muscle test, I got so excited about it, and I immediately ran to the grocery store. I'd gotten into homeopathics. I was using a lot of homeopathics on my children, and I had realized that some toothpaste said they were peppermint and weren't. It was actually a form of camphor called peppermint by companies. Was taking the homeopathics offline. So I ran to the grocery store and I thought, okay, I'm going to test my way through here, and I'm going to find a toothpaste that doesn't take the homeopathics offline. So I boiled it down to 3, and of course I picked the cheapest of the 3 because I was broke and cheap, and I brought it home. And I was so faithful with my kids. We were going to have wonderful dentist appointment, and besides that, we're going to use all these homeopathics. It was going to be wonderful. We got to the dentist and was informed that more cavities than you can even imagine
we'd ever had before. It was awful.
They wanted us to do painted enamel treatments. We had literally stripped the enamel off the kids' teeth. It took some years of effort, and I don't know that we ever rebuilt. The baby teeth didn't matter, but the older children who were into their permanent teeth, it was a major crisis. So what did I do wrong? And what I did.
Hey, but we weren't negating homeopathics.
No, they had great results when they got a fever. It was marvelous. And so I did not muscle test for several years after that. And I would go to classes and they'd be muscle testing, and I would be rowdy and rude and say, I'll tell you what, I'll look down your list and I'll pick what's right for me, and you can muscle test behind me, and if we get the same thing, then we proceed. And that worked for me. My intuition was good enough to do that. But eventually I went to a class, $499 for that class. And what I didn't realize is it was part of a 7-part series. I thought it was a standalone class. And I get there, and the first thing they're doing is muscle testing. Teacher wouldn't give me my money back. She'd flown in from Minnesota. And I went out to the hallway and called my husband, who's a very wise man. And he said, well, hon, you could come home, but why don't you stay till you've learned at least one thing?
One thing to make it worth the money we spent.
One thing, $500 thing. By the time I had finished out the day, I had learned some things. And that is these next 3 questions that she taught us. It's not enough to know how to get yes and no answers. It's knowing what to do with them when you get there.
So when you're all done muscle testing and you think you found the answers you set out to get and you're all ready to go with them, 3 things you're going to ask before
first question,
you go with it.
Favorite question, any reason not to? Okay. Why would you have tested it and it be the right thing and you be told any reason not to?
Because of the question you ask, will this toothpaste negate homeopathic? The answer to that question is no. Is there a reason why I shouldn't use this toothpaste? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But if you don't ask that question, you're not going to get that answer.
The most common time I get that no, don't do it is when I'm testing, and I think I'm testing for me, but the answer is something for someone else. Like you asked me one day, it came running through, I was zoning someone else, and you says, is there anything you can do for hiccups? And I immediately said no. And the very next thing I tested for this young man was a piece of the zone diaphragm, which was obviously for hiccups. It's It's like, do you have the hiccups? Have you been having hiccups? As I chased out the door and chased you down to work your diaphragm for hiccups.
So first question, any reason
any
not to?
reason not to. And if it says there's a reason and you just tested it, don't panic. It's not that you didn't test correctly. It's that maybe you don't start it for 3 days. Maybe there's something you need to take with it. Maybe it's for somebody else.
Maybe one of the next 2 questions is going to help you find the piece to that. Something different that I have not yet asked, something that might be a better choice. Anything different or anything better?
My favorite story on that one, we had a midwife. I was following her around on some routes, and the mother was super anemic, and she tested a very expensive supplement for her. And I knew the woman's financial, she couldn't afford it. So I suggested that we test some other, this was obviously the best for her, but we tested a few other things and discovered that super cheap blackstrap molasses would be 99.9% as good,
effective.
as effective. That worked for me until I listened to a talk once about how many babies would go astray in the hospitals of America if we only got 99.9% of them in the right place. You know? So the next question that follows that one is, how do I make up that other 1%? And that was just by adding some vitamin C to it as we took the molasses, and then it took it off the charts way beyond what the other expensive
one would have been.
supplement would have done. The trick to good muscle testing is to be patient. Keep asking, keep playing with it. One of my sons told me once, he said, "Mother, your newbies are better than you are. You've become careless and impatient." And he was right.
Get in a hurry.
If you get in a hurry, the muscle test will teach you a lesson.
So the first question was any reason not to. The second question is there something,
anything different?
anything different? And then the third
Third
question
one is anything in addition.
In addition. We no longer want to replace it. We just want to make sure we have all of the pieces.
All the
which is where your
pieces.
vitamin C would have come up.
Would have come up.
Yep.
So anything, and you know, it's a fun thing. When I get careless, I get taught a lesson. And I've tried to make a deal with heaven that the lesson will be for me, that it won't be one of my clients
that
that learns the lesson to teach
Working
me.
on her children.
That I won't mess up somebody else's life because I've gotten impatient or rude. So be
All right.
careful.
So I got to think about what our objectives for this live
Where
were. We
we're
wanted to
going
teach
here.
you what muscle testing is, and we kind of did that. We kind of covered how to be balanced.
Here's a simple little balance thing while we're on it.
Oh yeah, more
And
balance.
that's a chakra zipper. Just start at your pubic bone.
That was going to make
come
me
up.
yawn just thinking
Yeah,
about
just
it.
thinking about it
Balance
will
all
all
the
be yawning.
chakras. And you just start,
Balances both the central meridian and the chakras, and it's
and you just visualize the energy and
bring it up,
bring it up and over.
bring it up.
Okay, and we talked about. Look, I'm just going to scroll down through this, make sure we cover them all.
I
We
see
did the
what we're getting
thymus,
to.
thumb, left
was
and
the only
right
one I
brain,
saw that we
sideways eights, the
missed,
cross
so.
crawls, the chakras, water. Talked about prayer, meditation, scripture. Okay.
I want to stop once again for just a minute on both intuition and objective. Can you color a muscle test by what you believe? Well, of course you can. And that makes testing for your children a little more difficult because you often think you know what they're coming down with or what they need to change, what they need to do. If you're not very, very, very careful, you will color your muscle test with that. And so
You need to stay out of outcome.
it's always nice to be surprised once in a while, like with my bottle of Propel water this morning. My body didn't care if there was a little sugar in it, but it would have had a fit if there had been NutraSweet in it. So,
We have a question.
what's the question?
How do you know when you are done with practicing and ready to test for real? I like this question.
Oh, I do too. You may never know. Okay.
I'm still practicing and I've been testing for 20 years.
The thing that happens as people learn to test is that their intuition kicks in. And then they think they're coloring it and they lose confidence. In the classes I took, we test from a list and our finger would immediately go to it and we'd say it's above this word. And then we'd say it's below this word. We didn't realize we were missing the word our finger was on it. But inevitably, because our intuition was good, we had picked the word we needed and we would be frustrated.
Fingers right. So you're going to start by testing small things. I mean, you're not going to go right out and test, is this person next to me that's had chest pain, are they having a heart attack? Because that's like life or death situation. That's not where you're
Don't
going to
start there.
start. You're going to test for little things. little things that you know, which one of these ketchups would be the most nutritious. And then, you can flip the labels over and you can look and go, that one's got 4 times as much sugar and this one's full of high fructose corn syrup. And you can use the things that you know to, and then if, looking at the label, this one's got high fructose corn syrup, which I know is bad for me. So this one should have tested as better. Why did I test that the one with high fructose
Corn syrup is better.
is better?
Than the other one.
So you go down through the rest of those ingredients and you realize, oh, there's some, NutraSweets, there's dextrose, soda, and you'll get an education that way too. But you learn to trust yourself by researching why you got this answer or that answer, and then making sure you're balanced. But you test for small things, and then you can get to where you test for bigger things. And it's a confidence issue, which is why sometimes when I balanced, particularly if I'm working on, I have 6 children, and 2 of them I have to be pretty balanced, pretty intuitive, and pretty right with heaven before I can test for them. And the other 4, not so much. I'm confident I'm going to get the answers. I'm confident I'm not going to walk on their space. I can test for them fairly easily. But 2 of my children, if I'm going to work on them, I better be in a good place. I better be right with heaven. And I'm going to question my answers more than I would with the other 4. And that's just, that's a confidence thing. But when I balance to work on those children, I am more likely to pull out an oil and test for myself first and make sure that I am where I need to be.
The confidence
It
issue.
just takes time.
The confidence issue is a big thing, and
It's
it can't
huge.
overstress balance. It's taken me a long time to be able to ever test where a missing item is.
Yeah.
I've done it successfully many times,
I can't do that.
but I have failed more often than not. I don't think about testing till I'm so frustrated that I can't find it, that I'm crazy.
Yeah.
I did it just this morning. Valerie wanted me to find a big white curtain rod.
We were going to put a curtain behind us so you don't see the
Didn't-
ugly.
Didn't know where it was.
Yeah.
But by the time I started testing for it,
We don't have time to find
I'm
it.
pretty sure I'll go back this afternoon and have breakfast. That'll be helpful. And a big glass of water
good.
and calm myself down, and I will test exactly where that big white curtain rod is.
And,
And,
which is a good
so-
thing, because this,
But if your husband
Which
comes
is
in and
pretty
says,
good.
honey, I've just got to have the whatever in just a minute, you might as well bag it. You're not going to,
you're not going to find it that way.
it's not going to happen.
Yeah, but the confidence thing, this, interestingly enough, we sit down and we plan out 3 months of these lives that we're going to do. I don't know where on the schedule it is, but I know that coming up, we are doing one on self-esteem and essential oils that build confidence and trust. And
We're doing one on stress too.
we're doing one on
which will
stress.
help
Both
with-
of those would be very helpful to help build your muscle testing skills. The main thing when you're new to muscle testing, you're trying to build that confidence, is test for everything. And then don't get discouraged when this didn't work and that didn't work, because as you've done more of it and you're like, oh, that was just crazy. As you've done that over the next few days, you'll be able to reflect and go, it worked at this time, it didn't work at this time. And you'll start to recognize and pick up on, well, my energy was probably off because of this, and it was probably off this time for the same reason. And then the next time you go to test, you know, you know what, that's where I am. This is going on again. I better do this
And
or that.
sometimes she says test for everything, but sometimes the muscle test just really doesn't care whether you eat carrots or peas.
No.
It just, and you will get what feels like a muddy test.
But you learn to feel that.
And all I can tell you is do it, practice it, and do it. And do realize that at some point, for most people I have taught to test, they become intuitive. The muscle test for me, even when I'm working with a client, it's a visual thing. If I tell them, well, what you really need is KT, I already know that. I pull it up off a list so that they can see.
I gotta tell a funny story.
And even more importantly, if they sway forward for it, some stubborn teenager, why he shouldn't drink his Diet Pepsi, if they fall on their backside 4 or 5 times in a session, you've got their attention. Even though they know it isn't good for them, and I know it isn't good for them, that seeing their whole body fall over backwards is very effective.
It's very effective.
Tell your
So Dixie has she made a comment. She says, I've lost my wedding ring and I will try muscle testing where it is. Thanks. I wish you the best of luck.
good
in the
luck.
world.
It's probably too stressful.
I lost my wedding ring once and I tried testing for where it was. But see, I was convinced that it was at my house. It had to be. I never take my wedding ring off when I leave the house. And if it had fallen off, I would have noticed. So therefore, it had to be in my house. So I would test for it's upstairs, it's
Prejudice,
downstairs,
colored
la
it.
la la la. No matter what I did, I could not find my wedding ring. It was 9 months before it turned up.
I lost mine at a neighbor's when I zoned him, and I did the same thing. I checked every room of the house for a week before
I'm
one of
lucky
his
I
kids
ever
finally
found
returned it.
because I had taken it off at the church at a Cub Scout meeting, and I had hung it on a hook in the kitchen. And I happened to be in the kitchen cleaning up from a funeral or some such thing, and one of the ladies went to hang something on the hook and said, "That's weird. There's a wedding ring right here." And immediately my mind remembered I had done that at a Cub Scout.
If you
I
can
remember
get
doing
balanced enough to find your
When I
wedding
wasn't
ring,
home.
I want to know. I
That's
want
right.
to hear about it. We'll know you're a good muscle tester, and it is possible. But you're going to have to center yourself, and you maybe have to let go of rather. If I don't
Outcome.
ever find this, it will be okay.
It may not be somewhere
Because
you can find it.
Otherwise you're not going to be able to establish enough balance to test accurately.
That's a hard one.
Can you call someone else in? Well, if they're a person who can set their ego aside and don't have to prove to you how smart they are, they can get balanced enough to find it.
I was really lucky to find it after 9 months. I'd given up. I just didn't figure I'd ever see the thing again, and I was almost to the point of admitting to my husband that I'd lost it. I couldn't wear it. I had gone on a weight loss thing, and so it needed to be
being
resized.
sized.
And yeah, we're actually there again, but
Mine's been resized enough times in its
I
life.
can actually wear it currently, but it's getting to the point where it's a little big, and so I've either got to quit dieting or face the fact that it's going to have to be resized again. But I've been wearing it on Sundays. It's hard to get used to wearing it again. I haven't worn it for 2 years.
Last time I went ocean swimming, I got out in the ocean with mine, and I know it's big enough to
Oh.
fall off and in the cold ocean. So I swam the whole day with
With
a
a
fist,
fist.
trying to keep
Oh,
it.
that's
Well, I didn't
frustrating.
have sense enough to put it on a middle finger. If I changed fingers,
Well,
we'd have been fine.
I hope you find it. That is a hard thing to lose because it has so much sentimental value. So good luck.
Yes,
I hope
it does.
I hope
Oh,
you find
good
it.
luck.
Okay.
Where were we? I have no
I have
idea.
no idea.
Let's belabor a minute more about the kind of things you test for.
Yes.
During your practice days, test for everything, test to find the broom, test to find whatever. But please don't ever violate another person's agency. I have seen some harsh things with muscle testing.
hard lessons.
A muscle tester who told some little teenager that her problem was her mother, and the teenager ran away from home, and it went downhill from there.
And the problem's probably actually the way that she's reacting to her mother.
Yeah, there's so many, and when you're testing, be so careful. If you're testing out loud, you may say, there's some energy around the heart that is less than appropriate, and they're going to run right out of your place and swear they had a heart attack in your the word cancer scares most people so badly that if you use the word cancer, their energy goes scrambled. You will rarely get a right answer to that question.
Yeah.
But if you use the word abnormal cell growth, you may get that and be able to fine tune it. So that brings you to, when do you test silently and when do you test aloud?
Can you push enter?
Enter? Oh, I
There we
told you
go.
I wouldn't pile my paper on it so you wouldn't lose it again this time.
There. I just put a link in the comments about where the blog is that we're talking about because Vicki asked.
Okay.
I'm having to keep hard
So-
time keeping track.
Be careful. I always test out loud when I test for other people because I don't want them to wonder what I'm asking. I
Yes.
don't want them to wonder
That's
what I
huge.
know about them. And as a foot zonist, I zoned a neighbor many times, and I was gone for a few weeks, and she had someone else, and they told her some emotional things and some relationship things, and she wanted to know if I could do that. She didn't want me walking around in her head. And my response was, yes, but why would I want to? And I feel the same way about muscle testing. I ask the questions they're comfortable with.
Yeah.
And we talk together about the question before we test the muscle for it. This is not a fortune telling session. This is not a prognosticate the future session.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
tell a little bit of the story. So I muscle test, and I muscle test very well, but I have one child that I'm struggling to work with in any regard, and she and I are not getting along very well. And I know that she needs some energy work done, but I also know that she doesn't want me to do it.
Oh, yeah.
And so I took her to someone else. And the first
Did
thing
that
that
with you at
the
one point.
person asked me was, do you want to be in the room? And I'm like, well, that would kind of, the whole purpose of coming here was so that I'm not involved in whatever she's going to tell you. And the lady got me so that I was sitting outside of the room, and she talked loud enough that I could hear her, and my daughter talked quiet enough that I could not. And that way I was involved in the session but I was on, I knew that she wasn't violating her privacy. I knew what she was asking her. Whether or not my daughter chose to answer or what she said, that was her privacy. But I was very impressed that even though this lady has known me for a long time, and she's known my parents even longer, and she knew that my children have been exposed to energy for a long time, she took at least 20 minutes to explain to my daughter what muscle testing is, what she was going to be doing,
What she
So
wouldn't
that-
be doing.
what she would be doing, so that my daughter understood how her energy was being affected and where that she, the rights that she had and the privacy that she had. And, she could have easily assumed that my daughter knew all of that, but she did not. And that's important. If you're testing for someone else, you need to either have them read through this blog so that they understand, and don't assume, well, I'm just trying to do good here. That's great, but it's not good enough. They need to understand what you're doing, and they need to understand that you're not going to violate their privacy.
And you're also not going to talk about them after they leave.
That's right.
I can't tell you the number of times my different children have tested me in one way or another by not telling me something and then tricky little manipulative things to see if I know the answer to the question. And I've had to sit on my muscle testing fingers pretty hard sometimes to keep from asking an inappropriate question. Just don't be doing it. Don't ever let it get back to someone that you talked about them in class or with someone else, something that came up in a session with them.
Unless you
They
have
need to be
permission.
safe with you, and not safe because you have a good bedside manner, but because they really are safe with you.
Yep.
If they're not safe, you will never get an accurate answer.
Yep.
Ever.
So in the blog, there is a few paragraphs. There's one about the art and science of muscle testing, and there's one about basic balance. And then really important one that we probably ought to cover is statements rather than questions. This
My
is
mind's going the same place.
huge.
Hey, that's good.
So you didn't say, is my name Valerie? You said, my name is Valerie. And it's a statement rather than a question, because if you ask a question, you've just thrown the energy right there because it doesn't know how to answer.
I often
that.
ask questions, but not of the muscle test. I will say, well, do we need to test this person for a supplement? But when I actually test the supplement, you do it.
Which would be,
You can discuss with questions, but when you start to test, you use statements. Why not? Why? Okay.
Let's give a couple more examples of that. So instead of saying my name is Valerie, or instead of asking is my name Valerie, you'd say my name is Valerie. So in the supplement instance, instead of saying should I take vitamin E, should I take vitamin D, the
Vitamin D would be of benefit to me at this
to my
time.
body.
Yeah.
And then with those follow-up questions, you'll catch, is there anything else I need? And now if you needed both,
Or
would
you get a
them
whole
both.
list of things 27 things that are good for your body. How many times have I seen people do this?
Yes, that's the worst question. This would be good for me.
The next question is, which ones of those am I supposed to take today?
Which
Okay,
ones?
that's a question. You're informing your energy that you're now looking for the ones that are top of the list today. Then you go down. This one is part of that list. This one is part of that list. This one is part.
Being specific.
And you narrow it down, because quite often people, they're trying to take everything that would be good for them, and there's no way their body can handle. And
So-
one lady whose hair was falling out from the supplement she was taking, and it took
Oof.
some convincing of her that too many supplements at the same time was the problem.
was the problem. So when you test down a list of oils and you're looking for the best oil to diffuse today, and you ask the question, this would be a good oil for me to diffuse. Well, your energy knows that on Friday you may have a test that you're going to be taking, and so that would be good oil for you to diffuse on Friday. You need to be specific that you're looking for the best oil to diffuse right
Now.
And
statements, be careful of your statements. My favorite example is, do we have any bananas in the house? There are bananas in the house. That's a good statement. If you don't word your statement right, it's going to come out like, yes, we have no bananas.
Yes, we have no bananas.
We don't have any bananas in the house. Yes. Oh, where's the bananas? Yes, we have no bananas.
Statements.
Make sure you understand. And the best way to validate that is to do it twice. The question is, this would be good for my body. The back of that is, this would not be good for my body. You want both a
Make
yes
sure.
answer and a no answer for that. It's also a fast way to find out if you're out of balance, because you got a yes to both questions, to both statements. So
Yep.
find out if energy, your balance is departed because one of your kids is yelling at you in the background or something.
So there's a lot more on things that we've kind of touched on, where you shouldn't test, inappropriate testing, privacy of the client, how to
being
make the client feel
objective,
comfortable. The blog is way more than we could possibly cover in an hour, especially with taking time to stand up and show you how to test and
I want to talk
different
about
ways of testing.
that uncomfortable feeling when you test something and you did the best you knew and the statement was good and your intent was good and you had permission and you had verbal permission, and
You followed up with your 3 questions.
and when you pick up the bottle to take it, it doesn't feel good.
Right.
Trust
Trust
your intuition.
my first question with that, when that happens, and it happens quite frequently to me, is this for someone else?
And it may be a timing thing. There could be a million reasons for that, but
Don't freak out.
Intuition is soaring flight.
Take a couple of
Muscle
deep breaths
testing
and
is
find
how
out
we learn
why.
to be intuitive.
What else do I need to know about this bottle? Is it for someone else? Is it something I'm not supposed to take until tomorrow? Is it something that I need but not today?
I've had this happen with a
Questions.
session someone has paid me money for, and we're sitting there, okay. But I just tell them, you have gone 32 years, however old they are, without this supplement. You'll live till tomorrow morning while I sort this in my head.
I can figure out why
I will
this
call
doesn't
you.
feel right.
Why? What is
Yep.
wrong with this answer? Always trust your intuition.
And that's
Except
why
don't trust your doubts.
don't trust your
Gavin de Becker in his book on fear says that we perfect fear what we practice faith.
And that's
Don't trust
why
your
muscle
doubts.
testing is so hard for people to pick up, is because they start to fear that they've got the wrong answer, and rather than taking a minute, taking a deep breath and going, okay, is this my intuition telling me that this, or am
Or
I
is
just
this my
having a
fear?
moment of self-doubt, and figuring out which one it is and then moving on from there. They just, I can't do this. That taking a deep breath and trusting that I can do this, and maybe even telling yourself that 3 or 4 times, I can learn to do this. I can figure out what is not quite right about this situation. I can't. And then what you need. Do you need a couple of deep breaths? Do you need a glass of water? Do you just need to walk around and think about it?
Walk around out of their energy for a minute. Just find your own. I can't tell you, there are still some homeopathics, even after muscle testing for 20 years, 25 years, that I test up for a person. I'm going to get that uncomfortable, ooh, are you absolutely sure you were testing accurately?
Vicki has an interesting
Especially
question.
if I tested in a heavy potency. It's like, I'm going to want to take 12 hours and think about that. What's Vicki's question?
She says, can muscle test help with addiction? And my answer to that is going to be yes. And the reason there's a lot of things. You could muscle test homeopathics that would help with addiction. You can muscle test oils that'll help with addiction. But the number one reason that muscle testing, to me, would help with an addiction is because addictions are emotional. And situations,
They're also physical.
they are very physical too.
I'll address that in a minute.
But a situation, you walk into a situation and it makes you feel this or that, and fear or whatever, and all of a sudden you find you're craving for. When I've experienced this emotion in the past, I have fixed that by taking a smoke or drinking or whatever, and it's a chain reaction.
The appropriate question is, what may I do instead at this moment?
Well, and what situations are bringing that on, helping you to find them. I think that this triggered this, and as a check and balance.
And use the muscle test to confirm that. And once an addictive person realizes, okay, that craving to smoke hits here, here, and here, and here, and they have a little spray bottle of grapefruit in their
Something
purse,
they can do.
something they can do instead. Something they but what I find with addictions is that the physical aspect of it, they can test themselves. This whatever, drug, cigarette, alcohol, sugar, this would be good for my body, and you will get a yes answer, because you've gone into withdrawal and your body needs it. If you don't
Energetically.
have it, you're going to have some nasty physical symptoms, and your body will say yes. That doesn't mean it's good for you. That doesn't mean you should take it. That
Doesn't mean there's not more questions you need to ask.
The other question is, any reason not to? Okay, what can I do instead? What can I know? Because I've seen that. I've seen women test for a headache remedy. This would be good for me. Yes, it's going to stop the headache. But the reason they got the headache is because they're having withdrawal from the last time they took the headache medication. And I watched a very dear person to me do that.
Best thing to do would be
It
get through
took
the withdrawal.
3 weeks off the medicine and the migraines were gone. they weren't a pleasant 3 weeks. At any time in those 3 weeks, she could have taken the medication and had a headache-free day. You know?
And the body probably would have told her that's what it
The
wanted.
body
to do.
would have said, yes, this will help you. This will make your headache go away.
Yep.
Addictions are interesting, but that replacing it with something else is, and preferably not replacing the cigarette with food, or find something that you won't have to break that addiction later. So
That's right. I really would strongly suggest that everybody read through the blog. It's much more organized, and it breaks it out into sections. If you're working on clients, remember these things, and if you're working on yourself, remember these things. And there is so much information.
And there is some repeats in there. Every time I teach a
true.
class, by the time they come back for the 4th or 5th time, they have violated some things I told them the first time.
I want to make sure you're
So in
remembering.
every energy class, I put another round of this is what you don't do. And some of them were written for a very dear person, my father, who tended to violate basic rules.
He gets in a hurry,
And he's very, very good at it. And when
and he has too much confidence,
he has plenty of
which you don't
confidence.
see very often. When people are learning to muscle test, you have the opposite problem 99% of the time.
Sometimes he was just desperate. Mom was so ill, and and so I wrote whole sections just to mail to Dad, and they all turned up in this blog. And it's like, okay, we could, if we deleted the repeats, it'd be a lot shorter blog.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it would be as good a blog either, because I want you frequently to be reminded not to violate agency, to always remember permissions, to always ask anything else, anything different, any reason not to, because muscle testing is safe if you do it safely, and it can mess things up pretty bad if you don't.
That question that we got, can muscle testing help with addiction? There are so many ways that muscle testing can help, and it can help. I mean, it can help with emotional issues. It can help with physical issues. It can help with figuring out what you're allergic to. There are so many
So many
times.
things
It is
it can
such a
help.
huge blessing learning to do, especially, I mean, for anybody, but for a mom with children, it would be like trying to live without a vacuum or
I
a major kitchen appliance.
Remember when
washing
I
machine.
learned to do it?
It's such a huge
Instead of standing
thing.
in front of the cupboard going, well, I could give him this, or I could give him that, or I give him, which one would be the best? It was sudden. I
Yep.
also found that in emergencies, when I opened the cupboard, one of them stood up and shouted its name.
Yep.
One last thing about addictions. I had one little gal working on alcohol addiction, and when the craving would hit, she would test, what's the best thing to do alternatively? What can I do? Sometimes it was get up and exercise. Sometimes it was often call a friend. And her first question would be, well, is the friend going to mind me calling? And the muscle test would say, yes, you call your friend at 3 a.m, they're going to mind. But the next question was, should I do it anyway? Yeah.
Yeah, you should.
Your friend cares more about your sobriety than she does about her sleep,
Yep.
And yeah, there were a lot of ways where the muscle test was helpful to her to realize that she was that important to the friend. Yeah, do it anyway.
Yep.
So
It is the blog is about 8,000 words, and most of us read about 200 words a minute. I believe that.
so that's quite a commitment.
So it's a
But if you scan
a
and
good
skip the
long
part
read.
you've read before, and they're well titled, so when you're about to repeat yourself, you can get through it pretty quickly.
I suggest reading it with a highlighter so that when you are scanning it looking for, I know there's something in here I need, they'll pop up. So I think we're about done for today, unless anybody has any questions. Something we thought, we were going to cover this in a few minutes and we forgot to come back because we're not, we don't sit here with an outline. We just come and talk. So if there's any questions before we go, we'll cover those. If you don't get your question in before we close out the live, go ahead and comment. We watch this feed for several days
afterward.
after this live is over. I'm gonna go home and make sugar cookies, and then I'll pay attention to it because
Why are you making sugar cookies?
I'm not gonna eat them.
Oh,
I'm taking.
that's what
them
I
to
said
a
about the
neighbor.
chocolate chip cookies I made for someone the other day.
No, I promised.
I did
Anna
good.
we'd
I
do
only
that
ate one.
today.
I did that.
So, and Austin wants to decorate shamrock, so that's what we're off to do today. But that's neither here nor there. Thank you for the refresher. You are welcome. We hope that this. I hope it wasn't too hard to see things with our funny camera angles and whatnot. But yeah, I think we covered all the different types of muscle testing, and hopefully you can
I
see.
never do a live that I don't wish afterward that I'd said something. So that I
Yeah,
didn't
that's
say.
true too. But it's probably been said in the blog, so she really did say it. If you all take the time to read the blog,
I'm very wordy when I write. Yes.
This video will also be available on YouTube within a couple of days, and it should stay in our Facebook feed.
So you
that
mentioned
long.
testing from a list.
I did.
And the one thing I know we didn't talk about much was why surrogate testing works. So let's take just a minute and address that. A lot of reasons. We're all part of the whole. We're all part of, connected to each other. But a very funny pseudo-scientific explanation I was given once was that, and in my midwifing school, I learned that DNA tells you who you are. RNA tells you what part of who you are. In other words, your DNA tells you about your cells, but your RNA tells you rather that cell is going to develop as part of an eyelash or part of your toenail. And it's kind of the same way with muscle testing. You know who you are, but you can also know who someone else is. Are they an eyelash? Are they, and
That's a little confusing, but
well, it is. But when you think about it, we are all part of the same creation. We are all part of one mind. If we are testing the whole of creation from the Lord's mind, or however you believe that, it's possible to do that accurately. It also has some scary aspects to it. I worked with a woman once who was taking a homeopathic that someone had tested long distance for her, and she was getting really sick. So the tester sent me, because I live close, to look at the bottle and tell me exactly what we had. And what we had was a much deeper potency than the tester didn't realize that it was available in something besides a Bach flower, a 9X, and she had a constitutional level 1M. It was a whole different animal than what she thought she tested for her to take, and what she was actually taking were two different
they're
things.
not the same thing.
There's a lot of things that can confuse a long distance test, but it's also very effective to test for your children who are far away. And I've had people stop in class and say, I have there's something going on at home, and know that their husband or one of their children, and go quietly into a quiet place and figure out what and why, and be dead on. I have seen some amazing things with long distance testing. But here again, that verbal permission, call them up and tell them you're about to play in their head if you possibly can.
That's a deep question.
Oh,
We've had two, and I'm not sure I understand the first one, so I'm gonna cover what I think she's asking.
And then if it isn't right,
and then if
ask
I'm
again.
wrong, we'll cover this other one, and then we'll come back to it. So Andrea Wynn says, can you review the first 3 rules of testing? And I assumed that you were talking about those 3 questions that you ask when you're done testing, but then it says balanced, and so I'm
drink lots of
thinking
water.
maybe
If
I'm off.
talking balance, drink lots of water.
Well, I think that
left and
she
right
might
brain.
be asking, so the first thing is to make sure that you're balanced. The second thing is to make sure that you have verbal permission and then energy permission.
Okay.
So if that was the question you're asking, it's that you're balanced so that you can test, that you should be testing, and that the person that you're testing for is okay with you testing. Okay, well, that's that one. If you're talking about the 3 questions you should ask
How
at
to
the
keep
end,
from doing harm. How to
it
be
would
safe.
be any reason not to, something different, or something in addition,
Something in addition
better.
to what we've
So
tested.
the
I have
first-
all the pieces.
I'm confused that. The first one is any reason not to. The second one is something different or better. And then the third one is something in addition. Okay, so I hope I've covered that question. Now the next one, my mom's going to love this one. It says, does heaven ever use muscle testing to teach us, i.e. making everything a negative response because we are too reliant on muscle testing, and the Lord wants us to rely on intuition
Absolutely.
instead?
Absolutely.
Yep.
I'm pretty
You
sure.
can become too reliant on muscle
Pretty
testing.
sure that that's why I got taught the lesson.
With the
It was
toothpaste?
almost as though a stupor of thought, because I'm really not dumb enough to give my kids something without checking the label better than that.
Yeah.
When I went to my dentist later, it's what he said. He named 3 toothpastes that will strip the enamel, and they were the same 3 that I had landed on. And it was like, I'm going to teach you a lesson because you're starting to test everything. And, I've worked with people who were good at what they did until they learned to muscle test. And then they were so reliant on the muscle test, they would turn to me and say, well, ooh, this family's not comfortable with the muscle testing. What do you think I should do? And my response would be the same thing you would have done before you learned
you
to
can
muscle
muscle
test.
test.
Yes, muscle testing can strip your confidence.
It's a tool,
It can-
though.
But it should become, I have people come to class from time to time and say, I used to muscle test, but I'm expected to ponder it out in my mind and
Yep.
follow my inspiration.
So Andrea, did we get your question answered?
So yeah, I have, like I said, you'll be surprised how rarely I actually muscle test. when I've pondered out in my heart, when I think I know, when I've lined up what I'm going to take or what I'm going to do or what I'm going to say,
Then you use the
then
muscle
it's
test as a
permission to
check.
muscle test. Yes. And the question I ask is, have I missed any piece? My dad used to tell me with my mother when he was caring for her those last weeks that he often had permission to test for things simply because he was tired. And see, that's backwards to me. When you're tired, you can't test. But if
No,
he
I've
was
been there.
able to get up, walk in, open the fridge, decide what she needed, if he was able to ponder it out or pray about it, he was
would have.
expected to. And I have found that so often. When I'm working with a teenager, to test for them is the wrong answer. To have them take a book home and read it, have it ponder it, have them make a decision, walk away from something harmful like their Diet Coke, because they chose to, is far more effective than falling on their butt. Yeah,
Because you told them
muscle
to.
test. But if you do the permission to test, no, why not? Because this is something I need to ponder and pray about.
So let's take that scenario. Say that you ask for permission to test and you don't get it. What do you do then? Do you just not test, or do you?
I look for the answer.
Why? Is it because I need more sleep? Is it because this isn't where I'm supposed to be walking? Is it because this needs to be walked later? Is it because it needs to be walked by somebody else? Is it because the person you're testing for needs to test for themselves?
Sometimes it is. And sometimes for me, it's because I don't have enough information to ask the proper question.
Yep.
So my question becomes, okay, where do I go for the information so that I can ask the proper question?
Yep.
And I will end up at my bookshelf and I will read it. Well, by the time I get ready to ask the question, I already know the answer because I just looked it up.
Okay.
And so the confirmation, this is where I was going. This is what muscle testing becomes, a piece of your life, not the whole way you make decisions.
I hope I don't slaughter this name, but I probably will. I think the name is Pascal.
I don't know either. So
I don't know. It says can't wait to watch the whole video, and that it'll be available just a couple minutes when we end from the beginning. Thank you. That's very nice. I appreciate gratitude.
We love a little thank yous once in a
Love
while.
it.
We get enough hammered on.
We do. One question I have is, can the answer be swayed in the wrong direction while testing based on what you want / think you want the answer to be? And that's absolutely yes. It's very hard to stay out of outcome. There's a whole section in the blog about how to stay out of outcome. And it's hard. And I have 2 of my children where that is particularly difficult for me. And like I said earlier in the video, that is why I finally took one of them to someone else. A, she didn't want me to work on her, and B, I was just having a really hard time not telling her the things I wish she would learn.
Swaying the muscle test is the easiest wrong thing to do.
And that's why people have a hard time developing confidence in their muscle test. And the only way to get through that is to learn to stay out of outcome.
Well, and you have to learn
first do
to let
no
go.
harm, and you want
learn to let
you
go.
are a tool that you are there to improve and to make
prayer
better.
Is the same way. You can knock on heaven's door all day, and if you're not going to do what he tells you, he's not going to tell you.
Sure.
And the muscle test is the same way. If you are absolutely determined to get the answer that you get, you're going to get it.
Yep.
And it's going to teach you a lesson. And I promise the person you're working on will survive you. It's this outcome thing for just a minute. Why? I'd never understood that. I'd go to class after class and say, well, they come to me. They want me to fix things. Of course I'm an outcome. I want to fix it. It took me the longest time to realize that I'm only one piece. The only outcome I need to know is
what you were supposed to do.
I do what I need to do today, that I walk my walk for them today.
There's a book.
Oh, I don't have to make it all better, or
yes,
don't
I don't
everything.
have to make it all better.
You bought me that book. That was a good part of the
excellent
change.
book. You are one piece of their puzzle, and you're not going to solve all of their problems today, and you're not going to solve all of their problems forever. You are there to give them some small piece. And when you start charging people to work on them, that becomes even harder, because you want to do $45 worth of good, or whatever. You want to be worth the money that you're being paid, and it's hard, but you're charging for your time, and you're doing the best that you can.
How to stay out of outcome. That takes a lifetime to develop, and about the time you think you do,
you got it,
one of your children will challenge you.
Yep.
You will want something so badly that staying out of outcome will. But if you don't stay out of outcome, you introduce fear. What if I don't get this right? What if they never get well? What if will introduce fear?
Okay.
And then the test goes out the window.
We had another thank you for the wonderful gift of time and knowledge. That's pretty cool. And then That's what I thought. I appreciate you sharing all this info with us. And then Michelle, she says, do you have any tricks for making sure you're getting answers from where you think you are and being able to discern if you are dealing with opposition or the adversary trying to get in the way?
Well, there's a couple of rules, okay? Satan behaves in certain ways, okay? If the answer you got required you to manipulate or use the word I like, guile, in which you tell a few truths to get, yeah. If you're violating privacy, if you're violating agency, if you're running where you weren't called, if you're testing in front of no permission, there's a lot of ways. But for me, it's like I never act on a muscle test immediately.
To wait and make sure it feels
Even when
good.
the person is there and they want to buy the stuff and take it home with them,
Let me think about that for a
I'm
minute.
going to say, why don't you go out and start to place your order, and I'm going to go stand in a quiet corner somewhere and eat a piece of chocolate.
Make sure that
Get up,
yeah, there's
know,
something
and-
to that,
and
that
get-
chocolate thing.
and get balanced and make sure that I'll ask yourself when morning and evening prayer, how much is ego playing in there? Is what I want, what am I doing? Make sure you're clear. Satan, the spirit, and manipulative tactics don't feel the same.
Another thing that comes to my mind is when you're working on clients, having soft, quiet music playing in the background, Satan is more likely to stay out of that. If you have a peaceful spiritual environment in which to start that you're working on, you're more likely to keep those evil forces.
When I have
at
stepped
bay.
out of a proper boundary with someone, it has been when I have allowed them to run on their spouse,
Yes.
to complain about their children, to complain about their boss. I mean, we need to listen to their troubles. There's a difference between listening for a minute one time and letting them drag negativity into the room with them. If your focus is on healing, on being better than you were tomorrow, on
The details won't matter.
then the details, the devil is in the details. I've heard you say that a million times, and you just
And
watch the
sometimes as a
environment in the
therapist, you
room.
have to explain that to the person. They want to tell you exactly what happened to them and how it made them feel and how horrible their life has been since it happened to them. And none of that matters.
The only thing that matters is how are you behaving to others as a result of that. How do we make
How
you
do
a
you
better person?
fix
That's
your
the only
energy?
thing that matters.
Yep.
So
Particularly with victims of violence, violent attacks, they and their
now you got to
mind
get the perp off the street, but once that's been done, then you leave it behind.
and your mind plays tricks on you. Your mind changes the scenario to something you can live with. It was such a horrible thing, and then your mind changes it to something you can live with, and sometimes it makes it better, and then you convince yourself that it was actually worse because it was worse than the punishment for that person would need to be this or this or that. And to allow them to come in and tell you their version of what they think happened isn't good for them, and it isn't good for you. And the muscle test and your ability to muscle test
I know
will be
that
gone.
flies in the face of current psychological thought. You tell your story over and over again, and eventually, for some reason, it goes away.
It balances you out. It doesn't.
It doesn't.
No, the only thing that matters is how you can heal and how you can move from beyond that. And so to acknowledge that there was a trauma, that it was a violent trauma, or it was an emotional trauma, or it was
And that it changed how you behave, but you can change it back. Choice
Yep.
is always there.
But the devil's in the details is my favorite saying, and I've had some trauma in my past, and I don't share the details, not with anybody. And it's not because I feel
And-
like I can handle them all on myself and I don't need anybody's help, because that's not true.
When this happened, I did not work with her. I sent her to someone else for whom she would open up.
And I didn't open up the details. I opened up the way it made me feel, the way that I was reacting. I had just gotten married, and how I was treating my spouse in response to that, and the things I wanted to change the way I didn't want to be. Not
You focus
Not what
on
had happened.
wellness. You don't focus
because you
on
can't change
broken.
what happened. You can only change the way you're reacting to what happened. That is the goal. And that's a huge trick. Wow. Wasn't
How
planning
to
on going here
tell.
today.
Yeah, okay. How to tell when you're testing from the negative. Trust me, if
Yeah,
you're
no.
trying to do good and you step into the jungle, you will be given warning signs. They will be slaps on the head. You will be told you are. I had a
This is
group
really what
in
you
my
want.
class once who came down from the upstairs where they'd spent the night and had tested some things inappropriately. my husband was sitting in the corner. His desk was in the corner of my teaching room at that time, and I could see him raising his eyebrows at me every few minutes, wondering why I was letting this continue. But following the Spirit, the class needed to see, and it wasn't very long before the negative was strong enough that we all went out and walked in the dirt, and we ended up having a
Barefoot
blessing
around
on
the grouse.
various people and on the houses. The difference between the Spirit and the negative side. The dark side of the force is pretty
The
dark.
dark side of the force.
So,
Pretty dark.
Yeah.
So, all right. I don't know. They say we need to end this on a positive note. So,
okay, what's a positive note we can end this on? I know, maybe it'll work, and I said it already, but if you are trying to do good, if your
Heaven will
intent
help you.
is to do good, and if you set your ego aside, your intent is to do good, not to look good, not to impress, you will be told, you will be warned, you will be turned aside, you will be able, and it will be, even the hard stuff will be delightful. It will be easy. I know one therapist who says she's worked with dramatic trauma victims. She says, if you're doing it right, with the right intent, with the right heart, it is energizing. And she was talking about walking into a prison and working with perpetrators of violence. And she found it
that will be hard.
energizing to help these men change.
One of the things that's really, this is where I want to end, is I get asked a lot to muscle test for people. That it's part of the life I've chosen. It's part of who I am and what I'm doing with my
Teach
life.
them to muscle test.
But I will get asked that question a lot. I would say daily. And the first thing that I have learned to do is to pause and ask the question in my mind, is this mine? Because it might not be, and sometimes if the answer is no, this isn't yours and I don't want you to go here, then the question becomes, whose is it? Are you to teach the person to test for themselves? Are you to give them, I really think that a foot zonus would be helpful to you. Look, this is one that's in your, or maybe what I think you need to do is go and talk to, and sometimes it's as simple as, this would be a good oil for you to diffuse today, and hopefully that'll help the answers to come. Sometimes it's not your walk. In fact, a lot of times it's not your walk.
The time.
And that's very frustrating. I take classes on how to do this whole social media thing. This is not what I want to do with my life, but I run all of our social media channels, and I go to these conferences and they tell you how to run the social media and how you should always answer people and you should always be positive and da-da-da. And we can't run ours that way, because if I were to give everybody the answer that they wanted, it would do more harm than good. So that is a hugely important thing, is to make sure that it is yours to answer. Sometimes heaven doesn't want them to have that answer yet.
I've had so many people over the years call me up and say, I prayed about it and you're the answer.
You're supposed to do this.
And my response to that is,
give me a minute.
I pray a lot. And if heaven wants me to do that, he would have hit me with a brick already.
I will do it. Heaven has a big frying pan. You do.
You have to give me 24 hours.
And I will decide.
I'm not sure it's your desperation or your inspiration that you're acting on.
Yes.
We will help you find answers, but I don't test because people ask me to. That's usually a good thing.
But muscle testing can, and if you are following your intuition, and if you are working on the people that God wants you to, which is typically your family, your children, you will do, and you will see amazing things.
I have to tell a funny story in
life.
the end. Okay.
I
had a friend who wanted to send a fiscus plant to another friend.
Fiscus plant.
And she didn't want to have it shipped across the country, so she called a florist in the area. And first she had muscle tested how many fiscus plants were in the place and where they were, and which one she wanted. She wanted the third one from the end. And she called the guy, and he picked her out a fiscus plant, and she said, no, not that one. That one's dead and dying. It's not a pretty one, and you're charging me grundle for it.
Because I can't be
and
there.
It took some time for her to convince him that she could read his mind and see his plants where they were standing. Ooh. And I happened to attend the funeral, and it was a beautiful fiscus plant, an absolutely gorgeous one that she, I have seen some very strange things done with the
very strange. But there's so much good that can be done. You can bless your children's lives if you work on one who's having nightmares. You can figure out, what oils will help them to not have those nightmares, and you can, if you take classes, you can learn how to clear that energy for them. And there is so much good that you can do, as long as you make sure it's what you're supposed to be doing.
And wait for that day when your intuition clicks in, and because muscle testing will make you more aware of your body. It will make you more, it's hard to describe how you can look at a page and one word on it stands out for you.
So we try to keep these lives to an hour, and this one's almost an hour and a half.
Oh,
so.
really? Time to get on to something
Yeah,
less
it's
fun? Okay.
time to. We shall see you all again in 2 weeks, and we hope that you enjoyed it. And go ahead and feel free to comment some more, and because we'll read back through these comments, and we'll continue to communicate with you via texting, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Listen, if you don't want your answer, oops.
I haven't actually ended.
Oh,
Go ahead.
If you don't want your question answered publicly, you should do as one girl did. Here's my question. Don't answer it publicly.
That's true. If you prefer, please PM me this, or you can PM us too. And if you PM us, we will PM you back. We won't put it out there publicly. And it's nice if you have a question that you can put out there publicly, other people can find that answer, and it's amazing how they
people
will.
can comment on it. I find often
Yeah.
that if I hang back when I see a question and 10 wholesalers answer it, I learned something.
I try not to. My
Really
new thing
fun.
is not to answer things over the weekend. Once I quit on Friday, sometimes I'm around available on Saturday, but Sundays I don't. I stay off social media, and it's family time. And by the time I get back to it on Monday, 3 or 4 people have answered it almost exactly the way I would have. So it's a great. If you can put it out there publicly, not only will you get more than just our opinion, but other people may read it and go, oh yeah, that might be useful for me. It benefits everyone. But if it is of a private nature and you want to PM us, we have no problem with that. And we won't make it public without your permission.
We promise.
Okay,